person I'm talking about is none other than Mr. Muhammad Anas. When you showed me your transformation photo, how you went from being skinny, right, into this pumped guy.
And I've come directly from the UAE here. The more you know about something, the less you think you actually know about it. Everywhere, I think the class that you come from dictates how people behave with you. So Dr. A knows a lot about the disease. Dr. B doesn't know that much as Dr. A. IELTS I've given has been an 8.5. So I haven't gotten lesser, I haven't gotten more. So it's just been 8.5.
Shut the front door.
Even though you got an edge, you still got to prepare. I'm like, Mrs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then like, Rahmat. Dobry вечер.
До свидания. That adds up to freaking $50,000 a year. No, you are a gym rat. That dopamine hit, it's like doing drugs.
It's like they used to call me penguin because I couldn't fit into any of the pants. So 80% is what happens in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And 20% is what happens in the gym.
At the gym, yeah. So part of me feels like without caffeine, I lose all these superpowers I have. Like I'm not that smart guy anymore.
Yeah. Research about things before you start doing them. And don't think that you know about everything before you know it. There's
Hey guys, hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Astra Muse. And today we got another very special guy on the show. And I'm super pumped today to be talking to this person. And this guy is an amazing medical student and he's involved in a bunch of other things as well. He has some experience of teaching IELTS. And on top of that, he teaches a bunch of science subjects at some reputable schools in the city. So, and the person I'm talking about is none other than Mr. Muhammad Anas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's I am. People have no idea how excited I am for this show because I'm so curious about your life. Because despite being so young, you've achieved a lot of things, and I got really curious about your life actually when you showed me your transformation photo, how you went from being skinny, right, into this pumped guy. And I'm like what is this guy up to? I really want to know what this guy is doing. So
I mean, you're too kind. I'm just trying to do loads of things because I like to have a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, and there's like being the jack of all trades is something I really want to be. So I just try to be that,
So there's a lot to cover today. So I want to go over a few points, like one at a time. What do you say we start off with your background, and what would you like to tell our audience a little about where you come from and why you're in this city?
Okay.
Right?
So this is like the first question I get asked wherever I go. So like, why Bukhara? As soon as they get to know me. So the deal with me is that my parents, I'm originally from Pakistan, and so my parents moved to the UAE, which a lot of people know as Dubai, but it's actually the country is actually UAE, United Arab Emirates, and they moved there in 1984. And then, like me and my siblings, we grew up there, and all of our life we've lived there. And I've come directly from the UAE here in search for a university. The reason why I'm here is actually a mix of luck, or bad or good, that's up to you to decide, but a mix of luck and a lot of other factors. So I graduated my high school in 2020, the peak of COVID. And it was like a joint dream. My parents' dream was for me to become a doctor, and I wanted to do everything. But then I settled for becoming a doctor. So we started looking at medical universities, and I really got accepted into a bunch of them all over the world. So some in Europe and some in other parts, in Africa as well, in Egypt. But the ones which I really wanted to get into, I couldn't because of two factors. Number one, COVID. And number two, the financial restraints I had. So long story short, I ended up here to continue my educational journey, which was in the Bukhara State Medical Institute.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. Like, of all the different majors out there, why medicine? You briefly said it's because it was your parents' dream for you to become a doctor one day, right?
Mainly, yeah.
Right.
So what we have is like when we go to high school, we have a choice. We choose between subjects. It's called A levels. That's what we give. That's the name of the exam. The presidential schools in Uzbekistan have started to give this exam. They had really good results last year. They're basically just focused on STEM subjects, but A levels has a bunch of other subjects also, like arts and economics and all these kind of things. So I did not take biology in the first year of high school, and if you want to get into medical school, biology is a must. So my subjects were chemistry, physics, mathematics, and IT. And usually people give 3 of these, but I took 4 because I was really interested in IT, and IT is considered to be not a very challenging subject. Computer science, on the other hand, is challenging. So those were my 4 subjects. And then finally, when I came to the last year of my high school, which is year 13 for us, because we follow the British curriculum, I finally took bio because this decision was... looking back, was like 90% emotional, but the 10% of it was like I wanted a job where I needed like job satisfaction, and what better way to have job satisfaction than to save people's lives?
Oh, that's a great answer,
Yeah.
right? So, because when you're a doctor, you should be selfless and willing to help other people and put in long hours of work and stay back at work and make a lot of personal sacrifices.
Yeah. I mean, those are the kind of things that I like doing, and I thought like a profession which allows me to do everything which I want to do would be medicine. That was my thinking at that time. So, yeah.
Right. And I want to talk a little about high school system back in your hometown, right?
Okay.
So in high school, you're supposed to do a bunch of standardized tests, right?
Yeah, we are.
Are students supposed to sit the IELTS exam back in your hometown?
They're not.
Uh-huh.
So essentially what it is in UAE, there's not a central system of education. So there's many different systems, and it's your choice onto which system you want to put your kid in. So basically, you've got the government system, which is the Arabic teaching system, and they've got English school as well. Then you've got the American system, and then you've got the British system, you've got the Indian, the Pakistani, the Bangladeshi. So there's many different nationalities live. So everyone has a choice. And so my parents put me and my siblings in British schools. Up until my primary school, I was in an Arabic school, and then secondary, we moved to British school. So we didn't have to give a standardized exam like IELTS, but we did have English as a first language or English as a second language as one of the subjects which we had to give if we wanted to pass the grade. And that was so the one which we took in year 10 or year 11 was a little bit more or less like IELTS, but it was like more challenging than that, if I'm being honest. And then the one which we took in year 12 and 13 was like extremely challenging, and that was like IELTS and SATs are like, when you compare, it's like a piece of cake. I don't like, no shade on IELTS, but like if you Google A levels English as a first language and English literature, you read the syllabus, you'll know the difference.
Oh yeah, so kids out there who think IELTS is the hardest standardized English test, wait until you do one of those tests you're talking about.
It's not. It's not. And I think that's where the future of Bukharan education is headed, like British curriculum or American, because people are already jumping on the SAT train, and people are giving SATs, which is the American schooling system, part of the American schooling system. And then you've got the presidential schools starting A levels and Cambridge checkpoint examinations. I work with some private schools which have started it. So I really think within the next 5 to 6 years, Bukhara is also going to have like students who've given A levels. I think that's where it's headed. Yeah,
for sure. Like you made the point that education system in your hometown is much more liberal than it is here, and I feel like this trend is catching on in the city.
It's. I mean, there's also like controlled subjects which we have to give if you want to pass the state requirement of a certain grade. And I think that corresponds to, in Bukhara education or Uzbek education system, it corresponds to like hours per subject. You got to give this many subject for math, this many for this, and this many for that. And you got to do all that. And you also got to practice another curriculum along with it. And integration of the two makes it an even better learning experience when you get the best of both the worlds. And I think Bukhara is catching up to this trend.
Yeah. But don't you think with all these different education systems popping up everywhere, there is need for some sort of central government, keeping an eye on them and making sure that the quality is up to much?
I mean, there's always a need for governance when it comes to education. But I think that the current Ministry of Education is really capable of monitoring these things. We don't need another system. What we do need is a refining of the current system of the status quo, basically, and having mandatory subjects that, okay, it doesn't matter what curriculum you study, but if you study in Uzbekistan, you have to pass a certain number of hours in a certain number or in a certain number of subjects. Yeah, and then it's the job of the teachers in the schools and the principals and the academic directors to sort of implement that government stature into whatever curriculum it is that they want to teach or they want to start in their school.
Yeah. So there's always need for that central governing system, making sure everyone is doing their job.
I mean,
right.
If there isn't one, then I think it would be a joke. Like people who would start buying their degrees and their diplomas, and people who can't even read would have IELTS certifications. I think there's always a need for governments when it comes to education. Yeah, as I said before.
Yeah, for sure. So another question I really want to ask today is, so here at the school at Astra, we got a bunch of students who want to pursue medicine as a major in the future. Okay. Right. So what do you say to those students? Like what kind of challenges can they expect? Okay.
I want to clear a misconception about medicine. Like people, when they hear medicine and they hear like doctors, they're like, okay, these guys must be really smart and they won't have a social life or they can't do anything else. But according to me, medicine is the easiest thing to do. I'll tell you why. Because all you have to do is the same thing again and again and again and again and again. So you sit down, just take a couple of hours every day and pick a subject and do everything systematically and just do that every single day. And that's it. Whereas when we come to, like, for example, something like engineering, then you get new problems every day, and something, if someone studies technology, then it's always like you got something new that you got to study every day. But medicine is like something that has been religiously constant. Yeah, I get it. Like there's new research and there's new drugs and there's new ways of dealing with different types of diseases, but they all stem from the same basic principles.
Right. Like human biology has been the same for more or less a few millennia, right?
Exactly. So let's take something really, really, really simple, would be the structure of red blood cells. So it's been the same since it was discovered. And yes, people are finding out that within the cell there's some new substructures, and maybe they account for some new something that they've always known that the blood does or the red blood cell does, but they just got to know it's because of that thing. But the fundamental structure is the same, right? So you just kind of build on top of that. Whereas in other areas, for example, English, like there's always there's some new rule or there's some new way that you get a teacher. There's you have to read everything to get these ideas and all these different things. But for medicine, it's just the same.
But I'm actually going around telling all students quite the contrary, quite the opposite. Like if you're a medical student, then you can eat English for breakfast. English is nothing. It's like a walk in the park.
I mean, in terms of the raw material that you have to intake when you're a medical student, yes, because you got to take everything and you got to remember everything. But I think it's really easy to do given the kind of the era that we live in. Like there's free flashcards online. You get a paper, you write everything you want to remember, you stick it on top of your bed, you wake up every day, you look at it and you just remember those things. So it's not difficult, because if you know what the class of drug ends in, you basically know what it treats. So you don't need to know the name of every drug on the market. You just need to know what it ends with, a suffix. So if you learn the suffix, you know what it treats. So there's these different tricks, but I just want to get rid of the misconception that being a medical student or being a doctor is something that's really impossible or extraordinary. If you have common sense, you can become a doctor. It's that simple.
Yeah, I'm sure this response is going to motivate a lot of students out there wanting to get into medicine, but simply they have cold feet because they think they're going to run into a lot of problems.
We need doctors. We need capable doctors who are willing to go the extra mile for their patients, because the sick people in the world aren't going to heal themselves.
Oh, yeah. Right. I mean, I guess you can imagine the world without teachers, but not without doctors.
I have a really mixed take on that, because I think doctors, in a sense, need to be good teachers or good sort of orators, so to speak. So let's take two doctors, and if you go to a doctor and this patient goes to both of them, and one of the doctors knows a little bit more about the disease than the other doctor. So Dr. A knows a lot about the disease, and Dr. B doesn't know that much as Dr. A. But Dr. B explains to you exactly what's wrong with you properly, and explains to you exactly what his or her course of action will be. And Dr. A just simply looks at your test results and goes like, okay, I'll do something. Who do you trust?
Probably Dr. B, the second guy.
Yeah, because Dr. B told you his game plan. He or she explained to you what's going to happen. Right, and that's a big problem, because what happens is the reason why people have stopped trusting doctors is because the ability of the doctors to explain what they're going to do, what their course of action is, they've overcomplicated it and they don't simplify. But that's just my opinion. They need to simplify and explain it to their patient. And then the patient will be more willing to get the treatment, and will be more willing to trust the doctor.
Yeah, actually, I can kind of confirm that from personal experience, because I feel like these days some doctors simply lack bedside manners, right? They're not able to speak in the simple, reassuring tone like your mom does. Everything is gonna be okay, honey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? Don't worry, we got this, right? Even if it's there's little chance you're going to recover from your illness. Yeah. You should anyway try being positive, right? So I actually got this injury recently, my back injury. I'm not sure if you know this.
Yeah. I remember you telling me this.
Yeah. So basically when I talked to my doctor, he was telling me that there's a possibility that I might end up getting surgery, and that I wouldn't be able to talk and all that kind of stuff. And I know he was just doing his job, being professional, and letting me know of what might happen if I'm not serious about this injury. But when I went on the internet and read a bunch of stories of people who had similar injury and recovered from it, and they're all saying that it's not as bad as most people think, and it's quite a common injury among people who work out at the gym, and instantly all the depression and all the sadness I had, it just vanished. And I wish my doctor acted a little more positive about the situation, even though the injury could possibly lead to some kind of a surgery.
Well, to be fair to your doctor, it's not entirely his or her fault, because is your doctor a he?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not his fault entirely, because as doctors, we've got this responsibility to be completely honest with the patient. Like, we need to be honest, like, this is going to happen to you if you don't take care of yourself. But again, back to the point why doctors need to be really good communicators, because there's a way of delivering good news transparently, which also uplifts the patient. And I think there should be more communication classes for doctors, or more workshops for doctors, where they're trained to sort of give this bad or good news to a patient in a way which, because healing is a process, and one of the big factors of that process is what you think about it psychologically, right? So if you have hope that you're going to get better, you generally tend to get better.
Yeah,
better better than the people who think they're not going to get better, if that makes sense.
Like a placebo effect.
Exactly like that. So
Yeah.
actually, there's this story about this. So back in August, I went back to Islamabad. I went back to Pakistan. I had some work. I was there with my mom. And we had this maid. She used to come in and clean our apartment and everything. And she got to know I was a medical student. So she came to me and she's like, I have severe knee pain and I can't do anything about it. And I've been to a bunch of doctors, and she showed me all her reports and everything. And then I got like her doctor's contacts, and I contacted them, and they said there's nothing wrong with her, and we've given her all the treatment, but she's not responding to any of it. And then I understood, because she's a houseworker, she's a maid, so she came from a particular demographic where when they go to the doctor usually just neglects them and doesn't take the time to properly speak to them. And it's true for not just for Pakistan, but everywhere. I think the class that you come from dictates how people behave with you, right? So if you jump out of a Rolls Royce and if you jump out of a Matisse, you're gonna be treated differently. Yeah, that's just common sense. So I've read everything, and I really didn't know what was going on. So I tried. She was like, just give me some medicine. I need to get better. You're a doctor, please. God will bless you, and all that. So what I did was I had this capsule of painkillers. I said, I'll give you one every day you come to work, but I'm not going to prescribe it to you. She agreed. So what I did was I took the capsule and took the medicine out of it, and I filled it in with a little bit of sugar, and I closed it. And she used to come every other day, and then I used to give it to her. And after 3 days, she came and she was so happy, and she was like, thank you so much for this medicine. I'm completely healed. And so she got me she got me and my mother some food, and she was like, I'm really like, may God bless you, and this and that. So that was why I thought that, because no one actually sat her down and told her like, look, it's going to be okay, just have this medicine. They were just like, she was kind of neglected. And that's where the psychology speaks to itself for itself, actually, because all I did was give her sugar and reassurance, and she was okay.
Yeah.
So placebo effect is real.
But this is kind of a delicate topic, placebo, because there are some ethical questions around whether it's moral for doctors to prescribe their patients some placebo drugs, and that drug may end up exacerbating the situation, right? So then that you're basically rolling the dice with your patient's life.
I mean, you can never be sure that a person has a disease, no matter how ironclad of a test you do. So it's always based on percentages. And that's why in like developed private hospitals and in Western countries, there's always a psychiatrist on call. So if a patient or if a doctor thinks that this patient is just basically coming here for the drugs or coming here for the medicine, there's nothing wrong with them, they usually bring in the psychiatrist on a consult, and the patient doesn't know that this person is a psychiatrist. And they sit down together and they decide whether to prescribe the placebo or not. And there's regular M&M meetings after the fact. M&M meetings are basically where the doctors, a really large group of them, sit down and discuss about a particular case of how the outcome was, what was the DDX, a differential diagnosis, that's what DDX means, and what could have been better, what could have gone worse, and all these different things. And that's what there's constantly new and new cases. And that brings me back to your previous question, where there are many young, inspiring medical students. For them, I'd say 50 years ago, a doctor would be a person who could memorize the most amount of knowledge and implement it. But nowadays, a doctor or a capable one is someone who is very good at researching different medical cases and prescribing or making a course of action depending on those different cases. Because you got to remember, again, everything is based on percentages. So it is rolling the dice, but I think I wouldn't call it that. I would call it making a sort of logical logical judgment call based on a lot of facts.
Yeah, calculated decision.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Sure. So what do you say now we, maybe talk a little about, your other pursuits,
Okay.
like teaching.
Okay.
I know you're a little involved in teaching, and
I am. Yeah.
and as the topic we're discussing, medicine, may sound like rocket science to a lot of our audience and viewers
okay.
who may not understand some of the terminology you're throwing around.
Mm.
And I'm honestly a little confused by the terminology you're using here.
Okay.
Because, what do you say we talk about something more relatable like IELTS?
Okay. Yeah. Let's go for
sure,
it. Yeah.
Right. So how did you get into IELTS?
Um,
And how long you've been doing this for?
So teaching goes really back to when I got into high school.
Mm-hmm.
So back in UAE, when I got into high school, me and my friends, we started this sort of website where we used to teach our juniors. It was only for the juniors of the school where we used to teach some subjects. And then after that, there was this, I think it was around about, must have been 2017 or 18, where this IELTS became mandatory for people who were going to like countries like Australia, Canada, America, England to pursue their studies, right? To pursue their universities. And the same juniors which I was teaching these other subjects like biology, chemistry, physics, math. So they came to me and they were like, "Sir, could you help us with English?" I was like, "Okay, I can," but I didn't really take A-levels in the last year for English. But no, it's not A-levels, it's IELTS. I was like, "Sorry, it's what?" It's IELTS. What's IELTS? And it's an exam. It's an English exam. Says, "Why do you want to give an English exam?" "Oh, we need it." "Why?" "To get into university." I was like, "Oh, that makes sense. Okay, let me get back to you on it." So then I went back. I researched a little bit. I gave the exam myself, the first time ever. It was in UAE, and I prepared for it for exactly 2 hours, and I went and gave the exam. Because I wanted to know what I was doing. And then we sort of started this thing where I used to sit in the library and call a bunch of my friends to teach them IELTS, and they told a bunch of other friends, and then it sort of really got big because the IELTS market had just been initiated in the UAE and it was growing, and people needed someone to sort of tell them what IELTS is. And then it was really a private thing with friends, and then some people started paying, and then I started charging. So I started doing that in 2017, 2018, 19, 20, moved here for the first year, focused on medicine because I didn't really know IELTS was also a thing here. 2021, got to know IELTS was also a thing. Then I went with my certificates and everything. I still remember the first center that I went to. It's actually closed now. It was called Level Up Academy, and went there, and then I got to know like the sort of market here is like really, really young, because back in 2021, I don't know if you remember, it was like IELTS was kind of a new thing here.
No, not really. IELTS has been around for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this city.
Okay. So for me, it was because maybe I got to know it in 2021, but it was really different back then. It's just 3 years, but people did not know as much English as much they do now. So in 3 years, especially in Bukhara. So, and then I started working there for a while, and then just sort of they closed and I left, and then I joined Millennium, and so it's sort of that's what happened.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest I think a lot of people know. Yeah.
All right, and I'm really curious what score you got with 2 hours of prep back in Dubai.
So it was an 8.5 overall.
That's impressive.
So every IELTS I've given has been an 8.5. So I haven't gotten lesser, I haven't gotten more. So it's just been 8.5. But there's different, so I get different marks in different areas, but the overall's always 8.5.
So like getting 8.5
Yeah.
and while you're native is no easy job, would you say?
So I had a chat with an examiner. He comes to Bukhara as well. He's a really good friend with a speaking examiner, and he said that he's seen native speakers from England, kids who are 16, 17, and the highest they could get was a 6.5.
Shut the front door.
Why? Let me tell you. So we're doing speaking part 3, and then I ask you like, so what do you think about coffee consumption amongst teenagers? And they would answer like, I don't know. It's good for them. Right? That's what he said. Those are exact words of the examiner. I don't know. So he said, native speakers don't always get an 8.5 or a 9, right? So it's a really big challenge to get. Yes, they can get a 7.5, but when you start entering into the 8s, then it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, right. So that means if you get an 8.5 or 8 as a non-native, that's kind of a big deal. That means you're doing something right.
Exactly. Yeah. That means you know what you're doing. Yeah.
But as for those people you talked about, the 16-year-old, teenagers who are native English speakers who get 6.5 and 7, don't you think it's maybe simply because of the fact that they're not familiar with the test format? So because if they knew in part 3 they're supposed to give an extended response, they would have done way better than the usual.
The format of the exam is not necessarily the main cause of their results. Because, okay, so if you would examine me on my mother tongue, which is basically Urdu, and if, let's say, there was an IELTS exam where instead of English, it was IELTS, which was Urdu examination, I don't think I could score more than a 6, to be honest with you. I'm conversing every day in this language with my friends, people at home. Like my dad, when he speaks to me, he almost always uses Arabic, right? So when we were speaking Arabic, and if you examine me in Arabic, that's also maybe a 6.5. But the thing is, when you give exams like the IELTS, it demands the vocabulary used to be almost perfect to get an 8.5 or a 9. The vocabulary used, and I'm sure you know this better than me, there's so many other things which go into like giving the exam of a language. So I don't really think native speakers necessarily are going to attain the highest marks of the language. Yeah.
I could actually say the same about Uzbek, right? If I were to sit Uzbek IELTS right now, I'd probably get 6.5.
Exactly.
Simply because I don't speak Uzbek practically.
I think even if you did, you wouldn't know Uzbek to that level to get an 8.5 on an Uzbek IELTS unless you study Uzbek properly for a little bit, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't obvious? Like, you have to prepare for something if you want to be the best at it. Even though you got an edge, you still got to prepare.
So that means we can kind of readjust the baseline for what's a good IELTS score here. Like, because a lot of teenagers now are under the impression that unless they get something of a 7.5 or 8, they're a loser or they're a failure. Oh yeah, because it's got to a point, this IELTS mania, where teenagers get all beat up about not having 8.
I think that's just hysteria, to be really honest.
The term, is. Yes, it is.
There's a medical term which we use, so in case of disasters which people psychologically bring upon themselves, and it's called hysteria. So I think that's what's happening. Because, okay, let's say, you can judge it by the levels the people who require IELTS judge it, right? So universities, foreign universities, they say if you get a 6.5, you're good enough for us. Why are they saying that? Because if you get a 6.5, you can understand all of the lectures, you can do all of your homework, you can communicate with people in their country. So that's all you need. So, and I think like it's in Uzbekistan that people are like, no, I need to get an 8 or an 8.5 or a 9, otherwise I'm a failure. I don't really think so. Because if you don't get that grade, 2 years down the line, you're going to be looking back at yourself. And this is for all the young people out there. Like you're going to be looking back at yourself and you could be laughing because you're going to be like, why was I so depressed because I got a 7 or a 6.5? It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. IELTS is just, it's a stepping stone. So you take that step to get into the university or to get into the immigration or whatever you want to do, and just I'm not just saying do only what's required. Like if it's just a 6.5, just study for a 6.5, because if you only study for a 6.5, you're going to end up getting a 5.5. So do your best, but that's it. That's all you can do, actually. You can't do anything else. So do your best, but then don't get depressed, because if you meet the benchmark you're aiming for, then that's it. You know that you've done your work.
Yeah, I could not agree more with this point. Language proficiency is one of the many requirements you're supposed to meet, right? And it's not the be all and end all of university admission, right?
Exactly.
They expect you to have some recommendation letters, do extracurriculars,
personal statement. They want you to have a lot of experiences. They want you to be like an all-rounded person. They want you to fit in properly. They don't want any sort of extremist values in you. So there's a lot of different things that goes in it. But language is, I'd say, like 15% of the 100.
And if you ask me what explains this hysteria, so-called IELTS hysteria, is I'd probably say it's peer pressure mostly. Right? Because all these teenagers look around and they see all their peers getting 8.5, 7.5, not realizing that they were brought up in this English-speaking environment, or they had siblings who had IELTS in the past, and they kind of got a head start in this game, right? And then they try living up to that standard, and when they fail that, they feel so lost, they feel so disappointed, and they think that's the end of the world. And that's part of the reason why I brought up this topic, because I want them to hear from someone who's involved in all these different standardized tests, and who's got a good clue what university admissions are like. That IELTS is just one of the many things they expect of you, and you don't even need a 7.5 or 8 to get in to be eligible.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, okay, if let's say there's someone who's trying to be an economist, and they want to get into London School of Economics after their high school. The IELTS requirement for London School of Economics is a 7, but they want you to get at least a 7 in your reading. That's their criteria. And I think at least a 6.5 in their writing, I'm not sure. It was this back in 2020. They might have changed. So let's say that you have someone who gets into the London School of Economics. One gets a 7, the other gets an 8.5. And 5 years down the line, the student who got the 7 is extremely capable at being an economist. And the student who got an 8.5 is still really got a language proficiency, but he's not a good economist. Who would you hire to be an economist?
For sure, the guy with 7.
Exactly. Yes. It doesn't really matter. That's the point I'm trying to make. So university, you need the language to communicate, but that's not all you need.
Yeah.
That's the point.
That's so true, right? Yeah. And for the record, guys, my first score was actually 6.5. And at the time, my peers, some of them got 8 and some of them got 7.5. And not in my wildest dreams did I think that one day I'd end up getting a band 9 if I just kept pushing. And at the time, actually, IELTS English was not my like end goal. I had all these other things in mind, right? And I kind of feel like chasing a bunch of scores, you end up missing out on so much in life. Yes. Like if you see the world through this IELTS scope, and not realize that the world is a big universe, and there are people, all these different industries, and they're involved. They have different skills and talents and qualities. And what makes them successful is that their ability to combine and mix and match different abilities, right, and present themselves to the world in a way that seems interesting, in a way that's creative, not necessarily because they're extremely good at speaking English. Their English or pronunciation is impressive for that matter, right? Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely correct.
So don't get hung up on these little things, guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sure. And now, as an IELTS expert, I guess I can call you that, right? Because you got 8.5 a few times.
I mean, so I don't know if that makes me an expert, but yeah, sure.
And plus, you said you got a few years of teaching IELTS under your belt, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
That makes you sort of an expert, right? So
if you say so.
All right, yeah. So I would like you to share with our audience some top tips.
Okay.
So one for reading and one for listening and one for speaking and one for writing, ideally in the specific order.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said reading first.
Yes, sir.
So with reading, I think you get to a point where it's all about time, right? So if you can find a way to manage your time properly, I think you can get the highest mark possible. Why? Is because if I would give a student, instead of 1-2 hours to solve, that would double his score. Ideally, that's where you want to be, right? So if you're at the level where time is the main problem, then just find ways or workarounds to manage that efficiently, because what you need to understand is every question is worth 1 mark. If you find headings the most difficult one, it doesn't mean it's necessarily worth more marks. So each heading question is also still worth a mark. So divide your time like that. That would be my reading. That would be my reading tip.
So quite frankly, though, I beg to differ here.
Okay.
So, because here's my take on reading. I feel like reading, and it's sort of an analogy here. Reading is like a puzzle.
Okay.
With bunch of pieces, and those pieces are the words.
Okay.
Right? If you want to solve the puzzle, you have to go and get those pieces. And only by putting together those pieces can you solve the puzzle.
Okay.
And that's what I'm always telling students. And I feel like the most essential, important piece here, ingredient here, is vocabulary. Not so much time management. And I tell them that the reason why I have trouble managing time, run out of time before they're done with all the 40 questions, is because they are clueless as to what some words mean in the passage, right? And they end up reading it over and over again, thinking that it might help.
I get where you're coming from, but to be really honest with you, this is what I've found from my experience. Like when I say vocabulary and when I want my students to focus a little bit on vocabulary, what they do is they start overanalyzing the words. And I'm sure you know this, like when you're reading, that you also need to understand the implicit meaning of things, right? So what they do is they follow some sort of formulas. They say, no, this is the formula to solve this, and they say, okay, I found a synonym in true and false, and I'll correspond the synonym in the text, so that means the answer must be here.
But don't you think like you can actually answer 60 to 70% of the questions in the exam if you simply know synonyms? Because I feel like most of the questions there are designed to test your vocabulary level. And they're about 40 to 30% of the questions where you need a little bit of deductive thinking. Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's my take on it. So what I'm telling is, if you just want to get to a decent 30 level, just look up the unfamiliar words, plug them in, and you'll get at least 30 correct answers.
So the thing is, like when I said when you're at a level where time constraint is your only problem, again, now when you say it like that, it makes more sense. So when you know enough vocabulary, but you're still not getting it done correctly, then maybe you should start thinking about time management. Because when I get students asking me questions, it's like, teacher, look, if when I finish the test in 90 minutes, I get a 40. When I finish this test in 60, I only get 25.
Yeah,
and then I'm like, why? And then I started to think, like, what's going on? And then I was like, okay, maybe what it is if they tend, because what they do is, if they think a question is more difficult, they just read it again and again and again and again, and they just are on this repetitive cycle of reading and answering and reading and answering and reading and answering. So then I say, it's like, okay, you just leave it and come back to it at the end, and then they're more relaxed, and then they can find the answers easily.
Yeah, but don't you in a way think they would be able to find the answer a lot faster if they just knew all the words there? And yes, I know they got to be able to connect the dots. Right now, knowing word meaning is not the answer to your problem.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so much weight off your shoulder if you're familiar with most of the vocabulary in the text.
Well, but the thing is, with vocabulary, and maybe this is just a problem with me, like when I've given the students like the vocabulary and they know it, and they've repeatedly I try to repeatedly use it in class and use it with them, and they know this vocabulary, But when that word comes in the exam, they still don't know the meaning in that context,
Yeah.
right? So what do you think? Like, what should we do then? Like, what's the problem there?
I mean, there are a bunch of problems here, honestly. Number one is anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they just forget the word at the moment because they're a little too tense, anxious. So they can't think.
Yeah.
Right. Number two is sometimes they are able to actually to figure out the meaning of the word using the context.
Yeah.
They simply don't realize that. Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, time management is actually a really good suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I mean, that's just my take on it. Maybe because that's personally as well, like time management is something, maybe because, again, back to your point, my vocabulary is like satisfactory to pass a reading exam. So I think like the problem with me mostly, or with high achievers, would be time management.
oh yeah. Right. Or with high achievers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree though.
Yeah.
I agree. But if we're talking about the majority of IELTS takers, IELTS students, say a lot of them, go straight to the practice level and they start doing a bunch of tests every day trying to fix their time management problem, not realizing their underlying problem is vocabulary.
That makes more sense. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Right. And how about listening then?
So
Listen to more of these podcasts.
yeah, listen to the Astra podcast every week, and then you will get a 9 on your listening. So again, with listening, so maybe you wouldn't like this answer as well, because maybe I'm thinking again about the high achievers, because that's mostly what I train. But it's going to be like zoning out. Zoning out would be my or my students, or mostly the people who I'm around with, their biggest issue.
Right.
Right. Listening.
So you mean like getting distracted?
Exactly.
Yeah, for those students who don't know what the expression zoning out is.
So you've got the headphones on, and you're looking at the computer screen, or you're looking at the paper, and just for a second your mind drifts away, and then you come back and you're like, oh
it's gone.
I missed it, right? And I missed it, and then you missed it. And then you try to deduce that answer, and then you miss a bunch of answers again, right? So this is like something which I would say. Maybe, again, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. I think this, again, would be for high achievers. Yeah. So what would be for like the majority of people? What would be the...
Again, vocabulary.
Vocabulary. Okay.
It's like... vocabulary is like the building block of language learning.
Okay.
Right. So if in the listening test, it's very much like reading, and all you got to do is to read the booklet and match the options with the words you hear. So you got to be able to pair and match words, synonyms. But anyway, distraction is a big problem. Getting distracted, like
because you got to focus for like 25 to 30 minutes on one thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes even I find myself losing focus in the middle of a test, and a bunch of answers gone.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that the same thing happens with me and some of my students. Is like when we're focusing, and it's like, it's just for a split second, but then the train of thought leaves, and it takes some time to get back to it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be sharing a bunch of focus-related tips and suggestions somewhere towards the end of the podcast, so guys keep watching, because I actually got a separate section of this podcast where I'm going to be asking you some questions about biohacks and how to optimize your productivity and focus. We'll get that part later on. Okay. So now let's talk about speaking then.
This is the trickiest question I'm asked. Like, how do you think speaking? How can I improve my speaking? And how can I do this? And I just wonder about if I'm giving the correct answer or not. But with speaking, I'm going to talk about in terms of like misconceptions.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of students are going to be like, my accent is not good, and therefore I'm not getting good band score. But what they forget is that their speaking is extremely monotonous, that what they're saying doesn't make sense. You get a 15-year-old saying that they started a business in America last week, right? So because of the memorized speech, right? And then they just say, no, it's because my accent is bad, and that's why I get this. It's not about the accent. It's like, what what you're saying should make sense, right? And what you're saying should feel like it's you who's saying it, right? And then I think that's the major thing. Like I think that's what stops most candidates from getting those high scores which they want, is like they're just reciting instead of speaking.
Yeah. So my take on speaking is, my tips really depend on the level you're on, right? As a starter, I think it's completely normal to memorize answers.
Yeah,
as a starter.
Too. Yes,
as
yes,
a starter.
yes,
Like
yes,
if you
agreed, 100%.
if you're just getting started, then rather than learn a bunch of vocabulary and grammar rules from different textbooks, you might just as well learn whole texts.
Agreed,
where
100%.
Everything is just put together for you. So, and through memorization and repetition, you just get a feel for it.
Yeah.
You just get a full feel for it. Because I know those students who just learn vocabulary and then bunch of grammar rules from another textbook.
Yeah, and it doesn't work out. Yeah,
they're not they're not going to be able to mix them well anyway.
Yeah.
I normally explain it to them using the chef analogy, right?
Okay. Which is?
So what I tell them is, so you want to become a chef, but all you know is how to cut ingredients. All you know is how to dice and slice.
Yeah.
But chef is someone who's able to mix them well, who knows at what temperature to cook them and how much salt and spice to add, how to, add salt and spice to taste.
Yeah.
So what I tell them, instead of doing just cutting and slicing those ingredients, which is in this case learning vocabulary and grammar, just sit there and watch what the chef does. And repeat exactly what he does.
Mimicking, yeah.
Right.
But I think we've got these different takes on all these different criteria, because I think the kind of students that we face day to day are really different. Because I wouldn't get any starter students because I can't, like Uzbek, I would have to speak in Uzbek or Russian. So I would only get people who can comprehend English properly at my level to then explain like my insights on IELTS. And that's why I think we have these different takes on all these different things, because I think with you it's like from starters up until the very end, band 9. But for me, I can't really teach the starters or the intermediates, or what's it like the pre-intermediates or whatever, right? So I can't really go there where they can't comprehend what I'm saying. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe we have these different takes.
Yeah. Even when I feel like on intermediate or upper intermediate level, you should anyway be looking up, texts and ideas.
Yes.
And ideally try to learn language as chunk as opposed to as like individual units, right? As a chunk, right? It kind of reminds me of the movies I used to watch where they would show non-natives learning a foreign language, and they'd basically be holding a textbook and where they're learning common expressions and repeating them regularly, like good morning, or how are you doing today, sir, or how can I help you, like when you work at a hotel or something. And I feel like you can get to a solid 7 level just by doing that. And if you want to get past that, then you would obviously have to develop some critical thinking, learn how to develop an argument.
And I think that's where I come in.
I
think that's where I come in. Yeah. So that's why when you ask for like tips and my insights to it, I think for starters or for people who are not at that level, they might feel or they might get misguided if they just listen to me, because I don't have any experience. I do, but not as much. Like the only experience that I can give them is putting them in an English environment, right? Because again, for me, I also know just chunks of Uzbek which I use regularly, right? So I'm not sitting
can you actually drop one on the podcast here?
So what do you want me to say?
Any random thing.
So, okay.
I think it'd be pretty cool for people to hear an English speaker.
My accent's really good. People are like, so when I go to the taxi, I'm like, "Yaxshimisiz."
Oh, okay. All right.
Rahmat. Yeah, and then so like.
And I think you also know some Russian expressions too, right? When you go shopping.
I'm gonna kill the pronunciation though.
Please. So, that's pure entertainment.
Okay,
all right, we love that.
Dobry večer.
Okay, that's cool.
So I killed the pronunciation, didn't I?
До свидания.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
So again, back like chunking is the way to go. You're right. Yeah.
And finally, writing.
Oh my God. Don't do this to
Listen,
me.
I actually have. I got this question I've been meaning to ask you.
Okay.
I read your essays a few times, and they're like your task 1 report is 400 or 500 word long.
Yeah, it is.
Text.
I have a disease.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine writing 400 words for task 1. If I wrote anything more than 250 words for my report and posted it on my channel,
Yeah.
people would instantly be like, this is not a report, this is a task 2 essay, what are you
Yeah.
doing here?
You
Right.
get butchered for that. Even the teacher, why are you doing this? I'm like, I can't control it. Yeah. So the thing with me is, like, as I said before, like I was involved in English as... So I was writing a bunch of articles, scientific essays since 2018. I've been doing that. And I think when I tend to write, it's like how I speak. I tend to like explain everything in great detail, leaving nothing to the imagination, especially when I'm writing a report. And I think that stems from my scientific background, like a medical student, a science student before that. And the issue with that is like, even when I find sort of some details, automatically what happens is like I just see that connection there, and when I don't write about it, I'll be like, no, I'm missing out. I have to mention that, so I mention it. And I think it's really important not to do that, because you need to filter information properly. But with me, it is like, so I used to do some programming before, so I can type really well. But I think that's not something that I should rely on a lot, because if I have to think more, then that gives me less time to type. If I'm giving the exam on paper, then that's a disadvantage. But yeah, I tend to write extraordinarily longer essays because I don't think they're fit for IELTS.
Yeah. But they're anyway quite amusing to read. I do enjoy reading them,
That's
right?
the
Your
point.
essays. Yeah. Right. So your final tip for writing is, so how would you say someone who's stuck on band 6.5 in their writing go from that to 7.5 or higher?
I think that's the biggest jump which students face, like getting from a 6 to 7, like that gap there is really big. And I think it all has to do with like, if you can correlate your ideas and structure them properly, like when I read it, it makes sense and it doesn't feel like you're so what happens is you start writing, you get another idea, then you try to implement that. But if you plan properly and you go like, okay, if I say this, and I try to make it as coherent as possible, because if someone realizes that you're segueing them, so if someone realizes that you're sort of leading them on to the conclusion, like a movie, almost like a movie, and then finally the conclusion comes. I think that's really what makes you, in terms of writing, in terms of IELTS writing, like someone who's okay, like this person knows what he's doing or she's doing. Right.
So in IELTS terms, basically work on your coherence and cohesion.
Yeah.
So that's your advice.
Exactly, yes.
Right. As for me, I think so 2 things you need to go from 6.5 to 7.5. Number 1 is topic familiarity. Like makes a whole world of difference.
Yeah, it
like
does.
The more you know about the topic, the higher the chances are you're going to write a good essay. Because simply you have more topic related vocabulary and ideas, so you can go straight to writing your essay, as opposed to someone who knows very little about the topic and spends the first 5-10 minutes wondering what to write.
Yeah.
Right. And number 2 is clearly coherence and cohesion, like your ability to connect different points and present them in a very logical order manner. Right.
So with topic familiarity, I think so what it is you don't need to know a whole lot about a topic to write 250 words about it, right? Because usually if you're stuck and you don't have a lot of information, you can just exemplify and you can get your way around it. That's what I think about it.
So
right? What's your take on that?
What would you do if you got a topic where you're asked to talk about human cloning and you've never heard of this concept, never heard of this term,
right?
Like, which is sometimes you get asked these science topics, right? So people think one day people are going to be able to clone themselves. Do you think it's going to be a positive or negative development?
Right. Again. So cloning yourself. Who doesn't want to make their life easier? And they go, okay, if I can clone myself, maybe my clones can get my chores done for me.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like a really stupid idea. But if you don't have anything else, maybe you can use that as a proper example and just write that.
Right.
So I used no scientific term here, but I was like, okay, it's like everyday chores. Like, okay, I don't want to go to class, I'll send my clone. Right? So you don't need to know. That's my take on it. But yes, if you want to get to a 7.5, yes, you do need a lot of topic-related vocabulary. You do need a lot of information on the topic. But what I'm trying to say is it's not impossible to write if you don't know about it, because you have to remember IELTS is not a subject-specific test.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't, and the examiners know this. So they know that the student or the person, the candidate who's writing this might not have a lot of information about this topic. So they won't necessarily judge you entirely on that. But they're going to judge you on how you present that idea.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of unfamiliar topics, what do you say we talk a little about your hometown, Dubai?
Okay.
I know there are a lot of videos on the internet people can watch and get some idea of what life is like there.
Yeah.
Or, but I feel like those videos only show people a snippet of what it's like living in Dubai.
Yes.
So can you, maybe walk us through some different aspects of your, culture and life in Dubai.
So, Dubai is all that glory and all that like high-rise buildings and having food and expensive cafes and all of that, and uploading them using your iPhone. But the thing is, like, you have to remember, 95% of the people who live in the UAE are non-locals. They're expats. Around approximately 5% is the only actual citizens of the United Arab Emirates. That's why it's one of the top passports in the world, and they don't grant you passports even if you're there, even if you were born there. I don't have a UAE passport.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. So
what does your passport say?
So it's Pakistani.
Pakistani.
Yeah. So they don't grant you passports. So what usually happens, the entire labor workforce, which accounts for a really great chunk of the people, are expats, right? And what happens is, so I'm going to give you a story. Let me explain to you using a story. So you get a person from a really small hometown, from a village, who wants to earn money. But when this person goes into this person is from an underdeveloped country, okay? And when he goes to earn, and he's illiterate. He knows how to farm. He knows how to do hard work, but he doesn't know the language. A lot of languages. He doesn't know English. He doesn't know anything else. He just knows how to work hard. And he tries getting a job, but he fails because there's a lot of unemployment. What he does is he tries to go into one of the more developed countries, and he ends up in Dubai. He's working there 12 hours, right? 12 hours a day. Sleeping in places in a room full of 8 people, earning around $300 to $400 a month, and sending a large chunk of it back home, right? That life that I just described is around 30% of the population, right? Let's come back to the other around 40%, which is the middle class, which are just surviving hand to mouth monthly. Both, and this was my story as well, both of the parents working, and my dad's story was a previous example I gave. The laborer who goes out of his home to earn money and send it back to his family. And then thanks to my dad, he's like the hardest working person I've ever met. And then from there, he brought himself and his family into the next middle class phase, which is basically both the parents work, and at the end of the day, at the end of the month, they have a total of $0 in their bank account as their savings, because the bills are too high, the expenses are too much. So a perfect example which I can give, which everyone in Uzbekistan will be able to relate, would be, let me ask you this. How much do you pay for schooling in Bukhara?
You mean public school?
Yeah.
0.
And how much do you pay for private schools?
I guess in the region of probably, depends on what private school you go to. If it's a private school like this one, It's roughly like 50, 60 bucks a month.
50, 60 bucks a month, right?
Yeah,
What would you say will be the average?
So the average is probably same number. Yeah,
So
probably
50,
same.
60, $50, $60.
Yeah.
The average fee of a private school, and remember,
Mm-hmm.
majority, so around, I don't want to give a number, but majority of the students go to private schools because, like me, they want to study in British curriculum and other things. So the average fee in a school in the United Arab Emirates is, ready? $4,000
$4,000 a month.
a month.
A month.
A month.
That adds up to freaking $50,000 a year
There you go.
for education of a single child, for
Yes.
one kid.
Yeah.
So if you have three kids,
it's around, and it changes based on the grades. This is me talking about the higher grades, right? So if I had Al Barsha is an area in UAE where you see all those high-rise buildings and everything. So Al Barsha is the name of that area. 34,000 dirhams for someone in KG1, preschooling 1. 34,000 dirhams is $1,000. Sorry, 34,000 is $10,000 a year. 34,000 is $10,000 a year for someone preschooling.
that's a lot of money.
So that's the so when you see the higher up 10% of Dubai driving around in their Ferraris with their $1 billion in their dashboard, it's there, but it's really, that's the minority. Right. So yes, there are misconceptions and there is extravagance and there is everything, but you got to remember, like, people work 2, 3, 4 years, they save up a chunk of money, they go and they spend it in UAE, and that's what they're posting online.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And you think that's how they live every day. No, they've been working for 5 years to do that. And that's why they're posting it. Right. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you see, guys, Dubai life is not as glorious as you think unless you come from a well-off family.
Yeah, or if you become... And then, on the other hand, there's also a lot of like success stories. Like, for example, Lulu hypermarkets.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the stories. Like, this was a person from India, southern part of India, and he started a small shop from all the money he saved up. And now he has chains in all of the Gulf areas. So he started with a small shop in Dubai, and he has a chain of big departmental stores in every Gulf region. And there was an auction of a number plate, the license plate of a car. It was 7, I think. Yeah, 7 Dubai, right? And he bought it for $3 million.
So this guy is an example of a self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm guessing competition in Dubai is crazy. Like,
absolutely.
Right. You got all the brilliant, talented people, creative, and coming to this hub of business.
Yeah.
And center of business.
I mean, the government there is giving sort of grants and permissions to. So if you have an idea, and it can be about anything, to develop anything, right? And if you have this idea, there's a portal of the United Arab Emirates government, and you upload your idea with your prototype on that portal, and they're gonna call you there. They're gonna fund your project until you complete. They're gonna give you a place to live. They're gonna take care of everything until you complete your project. After you complete your project, they're also maybe willing to give you some employment opportunities.
So regardless of your nationality and where you're from.
Yes.
So if I'm someone living in Bukhara and decides to work on a project and upload it on that website, and it gets approved by the Dubai government, I get to get a visa.
You get a 10-year visa
to Dubai.
It's a golden visa. They call it the golden visa. You get a 10-year visa. You get taken care of until you complete the project. And guess where you live? Have you seen like the museum, the rounded museum, just write Dubai skyline or Dubai Museum of the Future. That's the name. Museum of the Future.
Yeah, it looks like actually a P or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Your office is going to be in there. So if you get accepted, that's where you live.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
So if you happen to have any genius ideas, guys, or some kind of a
feel free to
project,
give it a shot. Yeah,
this is your jackpot. This is the golden ticket to Dubai.
It is,
Right. That's impressive. So what are some cultural differences you noticed once you moved in here? Right.
So I think Dubai has undergone a lot of change. So if I was to talk about culture 10 years ago...
I was talking about Bukhara here, like once you moved in here.
Okay.
So what are some aspects of our culture that instantly came as a shock?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So when I came, this was back in 2020, and my mom actually came with me. Right. So I got, because she was working and she was like, okay, I need a break. I was like, why don't you come with me and just drop me to the university? So she did come, and I remember very clearly because she's a diabetic. That means she needs to eat something after every 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, because she needs her insulin. So I remember we were on the train from Tashkent to Bukhara. It was the fast train. Someone booked it for us. And so we got to Bukhara at 10 p.m. Someone came and picked us up from there and dropped us off at the hotel. And by that time, it was 10:30, 11-ish. And then I went to the hotel lobby. And I was like, tell me a place to go and eat. And then that person just straight up to my face says like, but it's 11 p.m. And I was looking at him.
What's that supposed to mean?
Yeah, I'm like, I know that. And I was like, so why are you asking about food? I'm like, what? So I was like, so there's nothing open? He's like, no, I'm sorry. Can you make me something? I was like, no, our chef has gone home. But it's just 11 p.m. I'm like, I need to eat because my mother's a diabetic. He's like, okay, wait. Because it was in the winters I came. I think it must have been December or something. It's like, okay, wait. Because that person didn't know English. So when I'm talking like him, it sounds like I'm being rude, but it was really helpful. But that's just how he spoke. Because he was translating. He was like, okay, wait. And I waited in the lobby. And I told him, just wait, I'll get something for you. And God bless him, he got some leftovers from his house for us. And then we ate that. And then that was a shock. Because in Dubai, it was like, even now in Bukhara nowadays there are like 24-hour places where you can get at least something to eat, but in 2020 it wasn't there. And that was the biggest, like, as soon as I came in, it was a hit. I was like, where have I come? Like, how am I going to survive? There's no food after 10. But then, slowly things go. So not much of a culture thing, but like, people in Bukhara are early risers. Like everyone's up at like 5 a.m.
Yeah, not me though, guys.
Yeah,
not me.
Not me either.
Yeah. And do you have any other pet peeves about this city?
If I start talking, I think people in Bukhara are going to start hating me.
Don't worry about that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just
it's
like the sort of.
We're open to suggestions. Okay,
no,
we'll do what we can do.
Like I'm really happy to be here. It's a really welcoming country and everything. But it's just like you meet some people and they sort of change your perspective on things because of how they are, and then you start picturing the entire nation of being like, why are Bukharan people like this? But what I have found out is like, for every bad, let's call it bad, for every bad person you meet here, you're going to meet 10 good ones.
Oh,
right?
Thanks.
Who are willing to help, right? So for every person who sort of tries to pull you back or stop you from being good or being productive or whatever, there's going to be 10 people who are going to uplift you here. So that's a good thing.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's just being honest.
Right. Any other things that you like about the city?
The food is amazing.
You're giving compliments.
Food. Yeah, the food. When I go back home and my mom cooks me food, I'm like, no, I want to go back to Bukhara. I mean, the food. So I'm a meat lover, right? And Bukhara is just amazing with its shashliks and its plovs, and I love the food. Yeah, I think Bukhara has become a part of me now. That like some of my some of my personality has changed to suit around Bukhara, and then I find myself doing some of the things which Bukhara, like for example, I like drinking green tea with everything now. With every meal, I just want to have some green tea.
And why is that?
Because Because when I came here, that's what people drank, right? So
Mhm.
because I came in the winter, and it was like you put there's the teapot, the china of green tea with you all the time. And then when I go back home, and I took one of those traditional teapots back home, and I told like my family, like whenever we're gonna have a meal, we're gonna have green tea with it. So and then you pour it in, and then you pour it back in, and then you pour it in, then 3 times, then you drink some tea. So that's something I like doing. Yeah.
So would you like to make some of that in your hometown as well when you get back? Or
I think my family already does that now.
Oh,
So they
okay.
already drink green tea with every meal. They don't do it the 3-time thing, but they do green tea. Yeah.
Right. And what are some of the changes you'd like to see in the city? Like, so if there was something you could change about the city apart from traffic.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is it's a growing
'cause
problem.
it's
But
getting crazy.
I just think, and this might be really personal, but
Mhm.
what I think is, there's a couple of things, but what I want to say first is like having a proper system dealing with like foreign people, right? Having like some set, just try going to the bank, right? If I have some work at the bank, I have to cancel everything else that day, right? Because being a foreigner, and don't get me wrong, like Bukharan people are really welcoming, really good, but like the bureaucracy of it, like there's no set rules. And I don't even think the people who work at these places know what's happening. And they try to feed the data in as a local, and then they're like, but you're not Uzbek. I'm like, yeah, can't you see the color of my passport? Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. But then you got to go through these security checks. And I think I face more of these issues because when I came back in 2020, we were kind of the first big batch who came in to be trained as doctors from a foreign country, apart from like Russia. And because for Russians, there's a set system, right? So if you've got a Russian passport, you have a set system of things that you want to do. Right. And then the thing is, when you bring this point up, right, when you bring this thing up, like you gotta have a set system for this and this and that, and then it just backfires, and people start blaming you, and they start saying and they start saying, no, our system is perfect. I'm like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, okay, if I have a different passport and I'm a different sort of person from a different country, I should have a set of rules which I need to follow, or you guys should have a set of rules or set of documentation which is required for me to get something, right? I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember back in 2020, right? Actually, not long ago. So there would be all these long lines at banks. And there were even no tickets, like where you can get one and at least know when it's your order, right? But finally, they are setting up all these, stations where you can go and get a ticket and it shows your order, the number. And there are still some banks where their customer service is not that nice, right? Yeah. But I think if you go to some foreign banks here, they got pretty nice customer service. It really depends on what bank you're dealing with.
The customer service is like at private banks. Yeah, the customer service is really nice. But the thing is, okay, I'm going to talk about a concept which might sound a little bit foreign, but bank accounts.
Okay.
They don't have bank accounts here.
No, we don't. We simply have cards. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the biggest problem, right? If you have a bank account, basically what happens in the world is you have a bank account and you can link your debit card to your bank account, and then you generate statements, and then from that bank account, even if from your phone, you can do a lot of things. Like you can send some money to someone else and do all of this, and you can do that here as well. But the card system, so you got your Uz card, your Humo card, your Visa card, but this card system actually limits you from doing a lot of the things that you could be doing from like your bank account. Like try paying the fee of a foreign university.
There are actually
how would you
bunch of payment apps you can
use,
set up you can use, and you can like set up your
and
card.
I know, but the thing is, the charges on those apps are going to be
Oh yeah, outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there.
for me, I'm like a foreign student. Yeah. So I do need to move money around a little bit here and there. And I do have some other projects in some other countries. So I really need to have a bank account because I need to link it to certain places. But I can't. Right. And then the issue is like when I have SOMs and I want to put it in my Visa card because I want to order something from, say, another country. When I go and I want to change it to $2, it's like they're gonna ask me and my family tree until the first person who was born, and then they're gonna give me like $10. It's like amazing. It's outrageous, man. So, yeah. This might be like.
Yeah, sure. Those people who are watching, if you're involved in banking system, please do something about this. Okay,
yes,
yeah,
please,
we're gonna make our guests feel home, right? We're gonna make them feel comfortable, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, and we really appreciate this suggestion, and hope they are taking notes. All right, now what do you say? We move on to some personal topic.
Okay.
Like, I know you are a gym rat.
I
love the term gym rat. It's become my favorite expression now because like everyone I see who hits the gym like very often, like pretty much every day, I call them gym rat.
Okay.
And the first person that comes to mind when I think of gym rats is you. And ever since the day I saw you deadlift 100 and something kilos for reps, that image lives rent free in my head, buddy.
I think that was back in the summer, right? So I had some issues and I couldn't really be. I was moving around a lot between Bukhara and UAE and Pakistan. I had to be in these. I had some issues with the visa, so I was back and forth. Like a football in these countries. It's a very expensive football with the air tickets, but I couldn't really be consistent. The most I did was I would go for a run whenever I had the chance because running is something you can do. Today was my first day back at the gym. I'm actually coming.
Congrats! Congrats! Look at that pump.
Gym.
Actually,
so,
you look bulky.
So today was my first day back. So I'm coming straight from the gym.
So, what did you train? What part of your body did you train today?
So I did a push day.
So it's like bench press and shoulders.
So I wanted to do compounds only today to sort of get the blood flowing and get my body used to it. But then when I went to the gym, I just wasn't feeling it. So I was like, let's just do a push day. But I didn't do shoulders in the push day. So it was chest and triceps. And the reason why I didn't do the shoulder is because the area was packed. All the shoulder machines were busy. So I was like, okay, I just did a couple of push-ups. And so with the gym, it's like you got to show up, right?
Yeah.
So, and the thing is with now when I'm starting back, I'm realizing like I have a lot of work to do.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I do. Because it's been 7-ish months. I haven't properly had a session. And today was brutal. I was like my warm-up in the summer was difficult to lift for me today. Can you imagine that? I was struggling. And it was a wake-up call. So I was like, okay, I really need to get back on this.
Right. You call it brutal, but for me, it's a dream come true. Because like I haven't hit the weights in such a long time that I miss lifting, right? Because of my back injury. So I can't wait to get back to lifting weights again, deadlifting, bench presses, and all that.
I did. So I did all the 3 benches. Then I did a couple of flies. So it was a 2-hour session. So I did a couple of flies, and then to end, so I do a variation of the sort of bench press. It's really tough on your elbows, but I drop the weights completely, or I put a 5 on. And what I do is, so you lay down on the flat, and then instead of doing the conventional, you go like this. Right? And then you don't do it on the normal line, you do it way below. And then you bring it here, and then you sort of push it out. And then what it does is just squeezes your chest in, and you feel it. So it's just something I do at the very end. Right,
it's just nothing can beat that feeling you get at the end of a workout session. It's
exactly.
Like you feel
the pump, right? And then you go and look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I'm all right, I'm not that bad.
Yeah. It's like I don't know really how to put it. It's like drugs.
It is.
It
Because
is.
you get the
get that
dopamine. Don't you?
dopamine
Yeah,
hit.
'cause you get
Yeah,
the
it's like
dopamine,
doing
yeah.
drugs.
It's like eating chocolate but on steroids. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people do that literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, what's your fitness goal right now at the moment? Is it like putting on extra muscle mass, or is it like to shed some weight? What is it?
So
So,
it's all. So we talked a little bit about the transformation. in the
Oh yeah,
beginning,
yeah. You want
right?
to talk about it?
Yeah. So
Sure,
I
sure,
wanna
please.
because to understand the goal, I gotta go through it.
Yes,
Yeah.
we need the origin story. We need the
Yeah,
backstory.
You need the origin story. Yeah. So what it was when I was in year 7 and 8, I was obese.
Yeah.
So I was around 130 kgs.
Guys, I've seen those photos.
Yeah, he's
and
seen the
I've
photos,
seen
yeah.
those photos, and they look no good. Right? Because you had all these all this big belly, and then
I was like, so they
This-
used to call me penguin because I used to. I couldn't fit into any of the pants. So what happened? What was like the really big wake up call for me was like the waist size. So where we used to get our school uniforms, yes, our school had a uniform which we had to buy, and no, it wasn't black pant and white shirt. So there was a store where we had to buy the uniform from, and in year 9 when I went there with my mom, and then he gave me a couple of pants to try, and I went to a trial room and I wore them, and it barely fit me. And then I came out and I asked him like. And whenever it was like going clothes shopping with my parents, it was like just really, really, really a big chunk of swear words being thrown at me for being fat.
oh man,
Right?
this
Because
is-
parents. Right. And the waist size was 46. 46.
Is that centimeters, right?
Yeah.
Centimeters.
Now I'm a
40.
32.
Uh-huh.
So a 46. Right. And then I asked, like, don't you have a little bit bigger than this one? Because it's a little bit tight.
Mhm.
And then he said, no, this is the last size we have.
That's
And then my mom made me learn a lot of new swear words that day. So my vocabulary was because I was told like, you fat, yeah. And then I was like, okay, fine. But that wasn't the wake up call. I'm used to that now. I think every kid is. The wake up call was not having your waist size at your school's uniform supplier. It was like, okay, if you continue like this next year, you're going to have to take the uniform from somewhere else. And I was like, okay, that was part 1 of the wake up call. Part 2 of the wake up call was I just got new shoes that year, which had laces on them. Right, so there were PE shoes. So the day we had sports, we had to wear those. And whenever I used to tie my laces, it used to take me longer than all my other friends because I was obese. And when you're fat, the way you move changes, right? The way you sit, the way you walk, it changes completely. You have all this extra weight on your belly and on your other parts of your body. Like when you move, your movement changes. It's not just about being slower, right? It's just the way you move changes. And I had to sit down, and it took me quite a while to tie my shoelaces, and all of my friends had to wait for me to finish, and then we used to go. So it was like I started to feel like a burden.
and so insecure, probably.
Yeah, I never used to feel like insecure about things because my defense mechanism is just making a joke out of it. So I just made a joke out of myself, right? And I was like, people are like, you're fat, ha ha ha. I'm like, yes, I am, ha 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 ha. That was a defense mechanism. I used to laugh at myself with others to fit in, right? Because yes, I was fat. I knew it was, and so insecurity has never been my thing. That's just how I am. So, and then what happened was Ramadan came. So for those of, I think everyone knows what Ramadan is.
Oh yeah, most people do.
Ramadan came, and then it was like, I made a challenge to myself, like this month, I'm going to lose as much weight as possible. And I did a lot of things the wrong way because I didn't have proper guidance. But at the end of that month, what happened was I lost almost half of my weight.
You went from
120.
260 kilos.
No, 270.
That's almost half. Yeah.
Almost
almost
half. So
half.
I went to 70
Within 30 days.
within 34 days.
I know this story would make for a great weight loss program.
Yeah, but it's not ideal. Ideally, you lose this much weight over a couple of years.
Oh yeah, this is not healthy.
This is not healthy, and I do not recommend anyone doing this, because what I lost wasn't fat. What I lost was muscle, right? Because you can't lose fat that quickly. The first thing you start to lose when you lose weight is muscle, water, and then muscle, right? So I lost a lot of muscle, and you got to remember, everything of function is made of muscle. The way you move, muscles. Your heart, it's a muscle, right? So I was really, and at that time what happened was my appetite decreased so much, like all I could eat was an apple a day, like literally a slice of watermelon a day. And then my dad was like, what are you doing to yourself? My lips were really dry. I couldn't walk properly because of no muscle. I was just like this. My posture changed. And that was the photo that you saw, like, right? You saw that photo
just
as
a
well.
skinny guy.
Just a really, really skinny guy. But when I used to remove my shirt, I used to still look like a fat dude, because what I became was a smaller fat person, right? So that's literally what I was like. The body shape was just a smaller fat person.
Skinny fat.
Yeah, skinny fat. Exactly, that's the term. Then my father was like, "Why don't you try going to the gym?" Okay. By the way, when I was losing my fat, I was running around like 10K, 5K every day while I was fasting, right? And then I said, okay. But then the big strike number 2 was when I went to the gym, all I did was cardio, because I had the same sort of mentality with no proper guidance. And then I have this friend whose name is Shahriar, and right now he's a cricket player actually, and he has been one of my best friends since the beginning. And he went to the gym with me. I was like, bro, let's try lifting weights. And we were one of the kids who had all these misconceptions that kids nowadays have. And I can relate with those kids, because I did, like, lifting weights is going to decrease your height. Mm-hmm. It's going to stop your height. If you lift weights, something's going to happen in the future. It's going to mess with your hormones. Trust me, if you just lift weights properly, no injury, nothing, right? And then we started lifting weights. And again, I went through all those phases of the ego lifting and having this conversation with friends. But then I remember the first day I lifted a weight, we just randomly started lifting. So the first exercise I did was a shoulder press, because we just took dumbbells and we were like, oh.
And how much do they weigh? The
first one was 5 kgs.
Okay.
5 kgs in one hand.
Yeah, at least you didn't make the mistake most amateur lifters do, to just go straight to the gym and start lifting 15, 20 kilos.
My friend tried that, because it was his round first. So he was like, okay, I'm going to do, so Anas, what do you think, which weight is good? I was like, bro, let's try 25. We can do 25. He's like, yeah, we can. So we made that, but I handed him the dumbbells first. Like, you do it, bro. You're the athletic one. And then he went, okay, try again. No, go, you can do it. I think we shouldn't do it. Like, bro, it hurts. Okay, leave it. And then I gave him the 5. And try with this. And this is better. Let's do this. And then we tried that. And then when I started lifting weights, my appetite increased and I started eating food. And then I started transforming. My body started transforming. I started losing fat, gaining muscle, started learning about nutrition, did a lot of research. I've read like this much books about weightlifting, posture, mental health, physical health, nutrition, all these sort of things. And then right now, if you say my main goal right now, it's going to be to get back at the strength that I was in the summers, right? And then after that, it would be just, because I don't do lifting as a hobby. I think of it as a necessity, because you got to remember, with the damage I've done to my body, it's like if I don't have a physical activity, my appetite decreases and I start falling back into this cycle, right, of unhealthiness. So it's a way of being healthy.
Yeah. So when you said it's a necessity, you sounded very much like a famous bodybuilder, Arnold.
Yeah.
Because he made the same point in one of his interview when people asked him, like, why do you still lift weights?
Yeah.
And then he said, why do you still have breakfast?
Exactly.
I lift weights for the same reason you have breakfast every morning.
It's a necessity. Yeah. Because once you, once you actually start doing it properly, like you said, you can't wait to lift weights again. And once you actually start going to the gym, not just the gym, any sport, go swimming every other day, you're going to start falling in love with the dopamine hit you give, and it's going to become a necessity. For me, that necessity happens to be lifting weights.
And what's your supplement game like? So are you taking any supplements at the moment? Or if you're not, what kind of supplements would you recommend amateur lifters?
So I've never taken supplements. Right. So
Never.
I've tried. With so a friend was like, okay, I'm trying whey protein. I'm like, okay, fine, give me a scoop. But I've never bought protein and creatine, and I think I told you this before as well. Like the reason why I don't take supplements again falls back to because just lifting weights is a necessity for me, right? And I think we had this conversation when we met at the gym, if you remember or not, about like supplement intake. Like I'm a firm believer in supplementation, but it's just that I don't see the need of it for me right now.
Yeah.
So I don't take it because I'm hitting my protein goals almost. Well, to be honest, I'm not. I'm not hitting my protein goals like as much as I should right now, but I think I'm having enough. And there's nothing to be ashamed of if you do supplement, because the answer is in the word. You're supplementing your diet.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're an amateur lifter, it depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to lose your fat or if you're trying to gain muscle, there's going to be different sort of regimes for you. But the thing is, why I don't advise supplementation for amateur lifters is because they start thinking of it as a necessity. And young people are going to be like, okay, I need to spend $200, $300, $400 every month on a supplement if I want to achieve my goal or if I want to achieve my fitness goal. But it's not necessary.
Right. And actually, I want to drop one piece of advice I got from one professional bodybuilder I follow on social media. So it basically said there is no way of supplementing a bad diet.
Yeah.
A bad diet.
Exactly. There's no way of supplementing.
And another important thing people should keep in mind when trying to get fit and build muscle mass, it's like 80% your diet and 20% comes from your workout regime.
Yeah. So 80% is what happens in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And 20% is what happens in the gym.
At the gym. Yeah.
So what you see means a lot. Because you see people going to the gym for just maximum 3 hours a day. What about the remaining 21?
Right. Like with me, I've been hitting the gym for almost 2 years now.
Okay.
Right. And I've been doing it under proper guidance, instructions, and on top of that, I do a bunch of reading on the internet, like to educate myself on fitness and make sure I'm following the right regime, and I know what I'm doing. Like I'm not clueless when I'm at the gym. On top of that, I got my trainer watching my technique, making sure I'm not getting injured. But for some reason, I got injured anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's
all right. It's not a big deal really, though. But despite all these efforts, I haven't been able to put on much muscle mass because simply I'm not having enough food in the day.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't get to complain about not putting on muscle mass when I'm not doing anything in the way of my diet. Right. And when my diet is completely trash.
Yeah.
So yeah, but with me, I'm just an amateur lifter. Like I do it for fun. Right. And to me, it's like a necessity too. I just want to be able to, stay in good shape and not make sure that my sedentary lifestyle does not catch up to me. Right.
You're right.
And that I don't develop bad posture or some kind of heart disease because of my job, which requires sitting a lot all day long and lots of stress. So to me, it's like an escape, right? But eventually, when I do get serious about lifting, I'm for sure going to be putting more effort into fixing my diet.
I mean, staying fit is like if you have a fit man walking into a room, the room's going to stare at him. And people are automatically going to think like, okay, this person is dedicated. And everything looks like... People come up to me sometimes, they're like, oh, why are you so well dressed? And I'm like, I'm just wearing like a hoodie and you're the one in the white shirt and a suit. And it's just like things your clothes are going to fit you better. You're going to start looking good. And with that comes confidence. You're going to earn people's respect. So if an overweight person pops into the room, and if a fit person pops into the room, automatically, again with the same example, if you come out of a Rolls Royce and if you come out of Matisse, you're going to be met differently, right? So your body is also something that you need to have as an arsenal.
Right, for sure. Now, what do you say we move on to another interesting part of our podcast?
Okay.
And talk a little about different ways students out there who are trying to get that extra edge in terms of their productivity and focus. Okay. So do you have any biohacks that you follow routinely to make sure you stay at the top of your game?
So I think it's just like I am a very habitual person. That means if I do something for 3 or 4 days, I don't like going out of my routine,
mm-hmm.
right? And then I get that it starts to become really monotonous and you get bored. But for me personally, I've been blessed in this part of life, like my friends. So, and this might not be like proper biohack, but I'll explain why it's a biohack.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay, so I've got these. So I live in an apartment with 3 other dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was coming, they told me to mention them at the podcast, right?
Sure, please.
Yeah, so, but I'm not going to mention them.
No, please do. Please do.
I'm kidding. So it's Faizan, Tarif, and Hassam. You met Hassam the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
nice
what happens is, after a long day, when we sit down, right, and I'm really blessed with my friends because they're going to ask me, okay, so everyone starts sharing about their day and everything, and then finally we're like, okay, they're going to be like, if I told them at the beginning of the week, like I want to finish something at the end of the week, they're like, oh, so you finished this, so tell me about this. So let's say studies,
mm-hmm.
right? So if I tell them I'm going to finish the physiology of the nervous system this week, I'm going to finish studying that. At the end of the week, they're going to be like, okay, so you finished that, teach us the physiology of the nervous system. And then I'm like, guys, actually, I couldn't do it because I was busy. And then until I teach them, or until I tell them that, okay, I have studied the physiology of the nervous system, they're going to be nightmares to live with. They're going to be like, oh, so you said this, but you didn't do that. So they sort of train my brain into, and that's the biohack. So having people who really care about you and having people who understand you at that level, who support you in everything,
and also push you.
And exactly, and they're gonna because they're gonna question me. Okay, you told this, and you should have finished this, but you haven't, and why? Right? And they're gonna be like, okay, then why did you wake up late the other day? Because I live with them. Okay, why did you go to that party? You could have done this. So for me personally, it's like I have the support system that are constantly pushing me. And I think it's one of the biggest reasons of me being a workaholic is my friends back home. As I mentioned Shahriar before, he was like, he knows that like these guys know everything about me, and they'll be like, they're going to push me to everything. I was like, okay, so if they know I'm going to work at 10, if I have work at 10, someone's going to be up for their class at 9 or 8. For some other reason, they're going to come and they're going to be like, hey, you've got class at 10, wake up. So I've got these people. And then when I'm alone as well, right, I have this tendency to write down my goals of the week. And I follow someone called Ali Abdal on YouTube, who's an Cambridge graduate.
Yeah, I actually watch his podcasts too every now and then.
And yes, and he's turned into an entrepreneur. Doctor turned into an entrepreneur, and I watched this concept of bullet journaling from him, where instead of having everything or all your schedule and everything on your laptop and everything, he actually uses a pen and paper. And he materializes the goals he needs to meet and everything. And there's a proper format of a bullet journal. There are beautiful bullet journal spreads online, but you can keep it simple. And then that really helps me manifest into whatever goals I have for the year, for the month, for the week, whether that be financial, social, academic, whatever.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's, and when it comes to like biohacks, right?
But let me follow up real quick on the first point you made about having friends who push you.
Yeah.
Right. I could not agree more with this, because I really believe that your environment is key to your success. Like I heard a quote somewhere once, and basically goes, "You are the product of 5 people you surround yourself with."
Yes.
And it stuck with me ever since. Right. And once it hit me that environment is one of the biggest predictors of your future success, I instantly cut loose all those people who weren't exactly helping me. And when I said not helping me, I mean the distractions, and who did not share the same vision, the values, goals, and priorities. I had to instantly cut them loose and surround myself with people who were committed to doing the job I was doing as much as I was. And at the same time, I wanted to surround myself with bright, talented, smart individuals, but didn't simply have access to them. So what I did was I started outsourcing it with podcasts.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah,
I'd wake up every morning and put on my headphones, listen to smart people talk about their lives, their thinking. And over time, like within a scope of, 2 years, I went from being a total a weirdo and someone with really weird worldview and no shallow thinking and low critical thinkings to being the guy I am now, who thinks in a coherent manner, who can make an argument, and who can, inspire people and lead and all these different things. And I owe a lot of it to the fact that I changed my environment. So while you were talking about your friends, like it really clicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really resonated with me. So I can confirm that. So those students out there who are trying to get a little bit of that edge in their job or their studies, I can't recommend enough this advice to you guys. You need to fix your environment. You have to surround yourself with the right people who push you, who motivate you, and who are there to help you, like you said. Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to be in the same field as well to push you. Like, for example, like there's one of us like is not really into fitness or anything. But then a couple of months ago, I was like, I'm gonna cut sugar from my diet. Right? I'm gonna go on a sugar cut. So what they did was, and like 3 of us are into fitness and regular gym. They were like, yeah, let's do that. So we cut all the sugar and everything. And then there were cupcakes. Someone brought cupcakes. and I have a sweet tooth. So I was like,
let me guess what happened next.
Okay.
So the person who said they were going to go on sugar-free diet, all of a sudden forgot everything.
No. That person was going to forget everything. But the guy who's not into fitness was like, didn't you guys say that you're going on a sugar cut? We're like, oh shit, he remembers. Like, yeah, we did. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna take them and I'm gonna share them with my girlfriend. So goodbye. And we're like, okay, fine, go away. Yeah. So it's like having people who really care about you and your goals is important.
Yeah, but if you got a friend who says, okay, it's not a big deal if you have a cheat day, right? It's not a big deal if you give yourself a little treat. You're working hard, right? You can take it easy a little. If you have all those people making these comments, I feel like you're going to go off the rails, right?
I mean, it's not... There's a difference between having yes men and having friends. Like friends are going to say things you don't like hearing. And you have to be man enough to understand the place that they're coming from, because sometimes even when our parents like restrict us from something, and we're going to be like, why are they doing this and that, and then there's always the generation gap between you and parents, so they don't understand you. But what about your friends? They're in the same boat as you, so that's something to think about.
Oh yeah. So, any other biohacks? I think you were going to
about
say
sugar,
a few things.
And that was the reason I went on a sugar cut. I wanted to see if like cutting the sugar off my diet would help me focus better. And because I read some articles about it online, some studies and everything, and I found out that when I have because when I let the sugar gates open, it's like free for all, right? So I have a lot of sugar intake, and I would skip a meal, but I wouldn't have a cake, or like a small slice of a cake, instead of that meal. So like fitness wise, okay, I'm skipping a meal, like caloric intake is the same, but I'm having a lot of calories from sugar. So I started restricting the sugar, and instantly what happened was I could see after a couple of weeks the effect it had. Yes, the lethargy was gone. Lethargic basically means like you just don't want to do anything, don't want to get out of bed, right? And I'm sure a lot of us have this feeling, especially during the winters. But like when I restricted my sugar intake, and I'm still on that right now, and the sweet tooth that I had automatically just disappeared, and now I don't like sweet things anymore. So it's the other way around now, and my focus did improve a lot. Now, it's not necessarily to say like cut sugar off entirely, but for me, as I said, when the floodgates opened, they opened. So I had to restrict myself and then slowly take it in a healthy, in an acceptable amount.
So yeah, so no sugary drinks, no biscuits.
Sugary drinks is the biggest problem I feel in Bukhara, because we were sitting the other day at a coffee shop, and we saw like the table across from us, and there were kids, must have been like 13, 14, 15, and all they ordered was like fizzy drinks and all these kind of like Sprite and Coca-Cola, and we were like, this is not healthy. And even when I see some of the young people at the gym, after their workout, they're having a bottle of cola, and I'm like, yeah, you need some sugar intake, but sugary drinks, because liquid calories are, if you're trying to get into fitness, it doesn't matter if you're losing weight, gaining weight, liquid calories are something that you have to think really, really hard about before you intake them.
Is that because your body absorbs it faster than
that's because
solid
the
substance?
satiation is not there. When you have a bottle filled of Coca-Cola, you don't feel full, right? Do you? You
don't. Not really.
Like after a couple of burps, you're like, okay, that was nothing. But it has the same amount of calories as a meal. But if you have a meal, you feel full, you feel good for the rest of the day. And if you have a proteinaceous meal, if you have a meal full of protein tends to break down over longer periods of time than carbohydrates, than sugar. So you feel full for a longer period of time, right? And you can get the proper nutrients instead of just sugar. So liquid calories, I think, are the kryptonite of fitness.
Yeah. And what he means is they're gonna literally hurt your performance. They're gonna slow you down. They're a real drag, and no wonder why all these students who come to my class carrying a bottle of some juice or some soda, sometime towards the mid part of the class, like 30 minutes in, they're all falling asleep or they all zone out.
Yeah.
Right. So part of it is because their sugar uptake is through
really
the roof.
High, because you can chug down a couple of liters of cola like it's nothing. And the sugar intake is enormous. Like you could eat for 2 days and not have that much sugar.
Yeah, right. And I've actually been on this sugar-free diet for almost, I don't know how long, probably over a half a year, right? And in my mental clarity and my ability to stay focused for a prolonged amount of time, like while in the past it was an uphill task staying focused in the class and teaching writing, especially where you have to be able to think in a linear way, like logical. It was a real challenge, but now it's like a walk in the park. I just come in and ideas are there, and they're all clearly organized. They just come out ready. Right. I'm glad, and I feel like a lot of it is because of the fact that I am cutting down on sugar. And what do you think about caffeine? Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because
I have a lot of questions to ask you about caffeine because I have mixed feelings about it. You see, part of me feels like without caffeine, I lose all these superpowers I have. Like I'm not that smart guy anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I say no to caffeine, and it's become like my mental crutch. Right. I say no to caffeine. I walk into the classroom, or when I'm dealing with something like mentally demanding, I have this fear that I'm gonna screw something up. Something is gonna go wrong because I'm not all dialed in because I didn't get my daily dose of caffeine, right?
Yeah.
I had that fear until quite recently, right? And but at the same time, I realized that excessive caffeine intake or chronic caffeine intake over a long period of time can lead to some heart problems, which I personally experienced. I almost had a heart attack, back in summer, I guess. And so, which do you consume caffeine? What's your take on caffeine?
So, I think for me personally, caffeine, I think, is a necessary evil for me.
Yeah.
The thing is, because of my sleep schedule, I sleep like 4 to 5 hours a day. On the days that I've got work and uni and I'm doing all these different things. Like nowadays, my sleep's fine. Nowadays, I get a good amount of sleep in because I've just, if you guys don't know, like I'm just restarting my work and everything. So
you're back to teaching.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back at Millennium, right. And we're gonna figure out some things about it. And yeah, so because I was away for a while and I just got back at the beginning of this week.
That's great news for lots of IELTS students out there, guys. Yeah. You are in for a treat, for real. Okay, yeah. I'd love to have him as my teacher.
Yeah. Thank you. So the thing about caffeine with me is, I have a cup of coffee every day. Okay, 1 cup. And that's it on normal days. And I have black coffee with no sugar in it because I think that's okay. That much amount is okay because I've been having this since I was a teenager, like tea at home and then coffee. And then I think, but there are times what I do is I go on a detox. Because I don't want to be dependent on something, right? And that's one of the major reasons why I've never smoked or I've never held a cigarette or I've never had a sip of any like alcoholic drink or something because I want to stay in control of myself. Right? I don't want to be held hostage to something like that. I think you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So I go on a detox. Like, for example, the Ramadan is coming soon, and I find Ramadan to be a very, very good month to sort out my religious and sort of, dietary habits, right?
Kind of reset your body.
Exactly. Reset my body, reset my faith, because it's like spiritually also it has a spiritual aspect to it.
Form of cleansing.
Exactly. So when that starts, and no matter how sleepy I am and whatever I am, I don't have coffee or tea or whatever. And the thing is, why it works for me, and especially in Ramadan, is because when I get up in the morning for suhoor, which is the pre-fasting meal, and I have that, then even if I feel lethargic or sleepy, I'm like, oh, that's because I can't have water or I can't have anything to eat. And it sort of masks that thing that, okay, I'm caffeine dependent. And it's not like as soon as Ramadan ends, I'm going and jumping to a cup of coffee, because I've already then sort of trained my body to let go of the caffeine. But then coffee is also something that's social, right? So when you are in a social setting, everyone's having a cup of coffee. So what do you say? Like, friends, oh, let's grab a cup together, right? So, but then you're right. If you can completely leave coffee and if you can completely leave caffeine out of your system, and you can still focus, and then you make it a point to maintain this sort of challenge, right? Where you cut coffee and caffeine and you cut sugar. I think that is a very good place to be in, because yes, caffeine is necessary for some people. Caffeine does get the juices flowing in your brain, but if you can get those juices flowing without coffee, you don't really need it, do you? And I think on the point where you said about like your cardiac health, right? Basically, you said you almost had a heart attack because of the caffeine intake. And
what's really interesting is, sorry for cutting you short here, what's really interesting is my caffeine intake was within normal range. I looked up on the internet and basically says intake of up to 150 milligrams is fine.
Yeah.
Right, that's the normal range. And my intake was actually something of like 30, 40 milligrams a day.
But
Right.
those intakes also depend on a lot of different things: the amount of water you're drinking, the type of caffeine intake. So if you're having caffeine from, let's say, a
Energy drinks.
energy drink,
Yeah.
that's completely different. If you're having it from a pre-workout, it's different. If you're having a cup of coffee, it's different, right? So with energy drinks, again, because it's sugar, it's caffeine, and it's sort of this mix, this like lethal sort of mix which you're dosing your body with,
Yeah.
where you're hyperactive. Because you've got a lot of sugar in you, you've got a lot of caffeine in you, now you're hyperactive. So it's basically you're hooking yourself up to two things, sugar and coffee. Even if you take sugar-free energy drinks, the taste of the energy drinks, when it hits the receptors on your tongue, your brain processes it like sugar, right? So you get this hit, and then you go into this overdrive of doing all of these things. So I'm really against all kinds of energy drinks, right? Because of this sort of lethal mix of caffeine and sugar that you have. And I say, if you do want to have caffeine, I would say the safest option would be to have tea, because that contains the least amount.
Yeah. Black tea or green tea?
I think black tea is what's going to give you that caffeine hit, but not too much.
Right. And my explanation and my theory, not explanation, because I'm no doctor, right? So, and I did a little bit of reading on this, on caffeine. So caffeine is actually what drives our civilization, right? Hard to imagine all these, impressive achievements as humans we, accomplish without caffeine, right? And so what I've learned is when you consume caffeine, what happens is your mind goes in this fight or flight response mode, right? And you are forced to think in a linear way, and you're forced to borrow energy from future, right? Because there's imminent threat. There is something happening and you need to be ready. So it kind of spurs you into quick action. And if you do it on a regular basis without giving your body a rest, it's eventually gonna crash.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what happened in my case, because I had been on this, caffeine nonstop consumption for 2-3 years straight without a break. I didn't ever cycle. Right, like when you take supplements like creatine, you go on a cycle, right? You take it for 2 months and then take a break and then go back. But I had no such thing. So I had been consuming energy drinks religiously every morning. I'd wake up before I go to work, right? And it eventually caught up to me, right? I guess that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's necessary to sort of have a reset button every once in a while in terms of everything, right? So whatever you're eating, drinking, where you are, instantly, like the circles you're in, alone time, it sort of brings you up if it's done in a healthy manner.
Right. So now, before we wrap this up, I really want to get into some, philosophical topics, if you don't mind, right? Because philosophy is what is like our compass. It's like what guides us in life. Like it kind of determines our direction in life. So I really want to know your philosophy at the moment. Do you subscribe to any schools of thought? Do you subscribe to any views? So yeah, because I heard you say one time we were texting that you're just trying to stay stoic.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell our audience a little about this philosophy? So what is stoicism? What does it mean to you? Can you put it in the simplest terms possible, right? Or how would you describe a stoic?
So maybe how I describe it would differ than the normal school of thought, because I have these, as we talked about philosophy, like there are many different schools of thought, and I'm still trying to find my way about getting one which I can really comply with, but there's nothing which really suits everything that I do. So I try to mix and match wherever possible. So stoicism, basically, when you say stoic, and the easiest way to explain it would be someone who gets things done without having any sort of deviations from the target if anything happens to that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
don't
it
think I
does.
did
Someone
right.
disciplined.
Disciplined, yes. So basically what it is no matter how much of an emotional wreck you are,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how many things are going on in your life, you still soldier on, okay, and you try to finish. And whenever things come, instead of being reactive, you sort of have a proactive approach to them, and you're like, okay, fine, I thought about this, so maybe I can do that, and maybe I can do that, and maybe I can do this, right? And then you do that without having that much of an effect on you. And I think Stoicism it's not something that is a philosophy in many terms. What it is it's inbuilt in all of us, and you just have to find out, like, okay, you have to reach that point where you start being a Stoic. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I also read another interpretation of Stoicism, which is quite similar to yours. I may sound like I'm just paraphrasing what you just said. Yeah. Just to bring another perspective into this discussion, is Stoicism is basically when you ignore what you can't control and only focus on what you can.
Yeah.
Like,
It's very well put.
yeah, others' actions or what they think of me is not within my control, but my emotions and what I do with them and my decisions are within my control. Right?
Yeah.
So Stoicism is when you feel kind of down about a setback in your life, and you know what you're going through, you're self-aware, you realize that it's how you feel about the situation right now, but you anyway have the ability to set that feeling aside, knowing that feeling is within your control, because you're the man in charge, not your feelings.
Yeah.
And still be able to persevere. That is, I feel like, is the ultimate, that is the true definition of a stoic person.
That's right. Any other schools of thought that you're interested in besides?
I mean, I share pretty much the same view as you do. I think you should be extra flexible in this life, right?
Yeah.
I'm not wedded to any idea, any philosophy, right? I don't think I'm the same guy right now as I was 2-3 months ago.
Yes.
So what I feel like is what happened within this time is I've come to learn more about life. I've matured and I've changed my belief systems, and I've realized that to stay competitive and to keep going, you need to be extra adaptable, which is something I was afraid of 2-3 months ago, right? Like this podcast I'm having right now with different people is something I wouldn't exactly dream of. I would not have imagined in my wildest dream, right? It only changed once I made that mental shift in my thinking, and when I realized that I need to be more open-minded, that I need to be more accepting of other ideas, I need to be more adaptable, and that holding on to one view or perspective and thinking that it will make you successful is just shallow thinking. That's close-minded, right? It was high time for me to ditch that and become the adaptable, versatile guy I am now.
There's something that I firmly believe, and that is like constantly improving yourself, right? Because Winston Churchill said, to improve is to change, and to perfect is to change often, right?
Yeah.
So that's what Winston Churchill said, and I've read it somewhere. It's really stuck with me, because no matter who it is, I try to learn something from that person. Because if I see someone doing or saying something which I feel is an area that I'm weak in, I try to get to know about that person's mentality behind that thing. Like, why does that person think like that about this particular thing? And why am I not able to do that? And that's where I make the connection. Okay, this is why he's good at this and I'm not. And then I sort of reset my feelings or my point of view for that thing, and then I go back and then I'm like, okay, now if I try doing it and then it works, if it doesn't, I do it again, right? So constantly trying to improve yourself by constant challenges and everything. I think that's That's what we're here for. Like if you find someone, or if there's someone who doesn't really care about any improvement in their life, in any area of their life, and they're not willing to do anything about it, are they really living?
No, not. You might as well be dead.
Exactly.
That's no different than just being dead. Right. And something else I realized is this profound realization I came to. I actually knew that from the beginning, but it really hit me hard when something personal happened, but I'm not going to go in detail about what happened. Basically, I realized that a lot of the times people fail to achieve their goals in life simply because they don't desire it hard enough. They don't want it badly, right?
Yeah.
It's if you want something badly, the world becomes your library, not your enemy. That's something I realized. You're just going to have to desire it so much that it's like oxygen that you can't live without. But at the same time, make sure you're setting only one desire, not have many desires, right? Because then having many desires, you'd be miserable. Yeah, you'd fall short of your own expectations, that you'd end up achieving none. But when you set yourself one goal and obsess over it, man, there's no stopping. You're going to turn yourself into a hell of a beast.
Yeah.
Right.
And for the young entrepreneurs out there, like I was watching some of Alex Ramon's videos, and so he was like, the mistake that young people do is that they think that if they do everything, they may succeed in one of them. But what they often fail to realize is that if they pour all of those resources into that one thing, which they really want to do, then there's 100% chance of success.
Yeah. And he actually uses this analogy from finance. So what people do is they try putting their eggs in different baskets.
Yes.
What he tells people to do instead is put your eggs in all basket and protect that basket at all costs.
Yeah.
Make sure nothing happens to that basket.
And then when it grows, he's like, then you can think about other things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a lot of knowledge here. That's a lot of wisdom, guys.
Yeah.
I wish like we had this information when we were younger, when we were 14 and 15. Yeah. And that's a massive advantage, like just having this wisdom. Yeah. But maybe it was meant to happen this way. We were meant to learn these lessons along the way. And that's what makes life interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I got a couple more questions before we wrap this up. And number one, so what advice would you give to your 15-year-old self?
Research about things before you start doing them, and don't think that you know about everything before you know it. There's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where the more there's a graph, and the more you start knowing about something, the more you realize you don't know enough about it. So at the beginning of starting something, you're like, oh, I know about this, and you're in denial. But then when you start learning about things, the sort of mentality that I know everything about this decreases as your knowledge about that thing increases. So that's why you have like Warren Buffett always trying to be like, okay, what's the next best investing thing? No, if I do that, if I do this, then this is going to happen, because he is one of the best angel investors out there, but he's still learning from new companies, right? So the more you know about something, the less you think you actually know about it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's so true. Right. Yeah. Always do your research. Always do your homework. Right. And one last question for today. Okay. What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? I know it sounds like a little bit of a cliche question, but I'm very curious to know I remember you actually once saying that you want to go somewhere far away, like African villages, and help people there and be part of a voluntary campaign, right?
But that won't be in 5 years' time, but that's my long-term plan. So there's this organization called Doctors Without Borders, and they have an exam and everything, and when you pass it, they sort of station you into places where there is medical need. medical assistance is needed really urgently, and it can't reach there, and they sort of station you there for a couple of months. They're usually really remote areas in poverty, and you tend to help as much as you can to the people in need.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds very altruistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you all the best
Thank you.
in your future goals,
Yeah.
endeavors. Yeah, I guess we're about to wrap this up. And
Okay.
before we do that, I really want to thank you for coming on the
Yeah.
show today and, sharing with us all
No
these.
issues, no issues. Thank you so much
personal
for having
stories.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a blast. I don't know if you guys enjoyed it, but I loved
Hopefully,
every
yeah.
moment of it. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Same.
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks
Thank you.
again. So if you guys enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like our content and leave us some comments in the comment section. And please do subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.